Hey team, you're about to experience my interview with Arjun Bhargava from Rye. What is Rye? Well, Rye is a universal commerce API that aims to unlock commerce in a marketplace way by supplying and connecting multiple merchants with multiple listing environments, as well as providing micropayments infrastructure and inventory infrastructure, basically connecting multiple buyers with multiple sellers with multiple middle players that act as the conduit connecting buyers and sellers. So you can think of Rye as commerce plumbing. It was a super interesting discussion, and I hope you enjoy it. This is the E-commerce Edge podcast with your host, Jason Greenwood. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. I have another very interesting guest here for you today. I think I'm going to get a lot out of it. Hopefully you guys will get a lot out of it, and hopefully we'll have a really interesting chat. So I would love to welcome Arjun Bhargava from Rye. Welcome, Arjun.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited for the chat.
Yeah, and you said that before we went on air, you mentioned that you had heard a couple of my podcasts before, so you know what you're in for.
A little bit. I think I've heard a couple, but yeah, I'm curious to see how this goes.
No, it's going to be lots of fun. Look, you reached out to me on LinkedIn and you said, hey, look, I've got this platform, Rye. Would love to talk to you about it on your podcast. And that's how we met. And we opened up a dialogue. And here we are to have a fantastic chat. But before we get into what Rye is and how it works and all that sort of stuff, maybe you can give us just a short background. It seems like you come from an engineering software development background. So, you're clearly quite technical, but yet you also have this business background as well, technical analyst with Goldman Sachs. You also have this entrepreneurial streak. I think Rye is your third platform or technology, or at least business that you have founded or co-founded. Plus, you were engineering manager at Reddit. You were with Reddit for 2.5 years. So you've got, and it's funny because a lot of the people that we have on the podcast, they do have that blended background. They maybe have a tech or a retail background combined with an entrepreneurial or business background. So that seems to work really well for technical founders. So what's your journey been like to get to Rye, which you've been running? You're co-founder of Rye, CEO of Rye, and you've been running it for over 2 years now. So what was the journey like to get here?
Yeah, definitely. You covered, I think, a lot of it. I think my background is pretty varied. I'm technical by trade, like you mentioned, but I've done fintech stuff at Goldman, have done kind of deep consumer tech stuff at Reddit. I really diving into different industries and just bringing in the technical skills that I have. I think what's really interesting about Rye is that I actually had no e-commerce background previous to Rye. So really the last few years has been, for me, a big dive into the e-commerce space, which as is pretty massive and there's a lot of complexities to it. And obviously people have been in this space for decades and decades of their careers. So, where we come from and with my technical background, I'm really looking to build something that hopefully disrupts the industry, but brings in maybe a new light to the industry. All of my co-founders and even the engineering team, most of us also do not have a deep e-com experience background. We all have very deep consumer tech, different types of other industries that we work in backgrounds. And the hope here really is to bring in that experience into this market.
Love it. Like I said, this does seem to be a common theme where, people not necessarily in the e-com industry, but they might have that technical background or that entrepreneurial background, a business background of some variety. They come at e-commerce with quite a unique lens because maybe they haven't spent 20 years plus in it. And so therefore they aren't necessarily either jaded by it or they don't put their thinking in a box of any kind because they don't have a frame of reference that will constrain their thinking by what's common, what's normal, quote unquote, best practice. All that stuff doesn't really apply to them because they haven't been, I don't like to use the term brainwashed, but they haven't been groomed by the industry to think a certain way is what I would say. And what you guys have built feels pretty novel. And in fact, so novel that I was having a hard time fully understanding it myself when we were chatting via LinkedIn because I got the impression that it had elements of a marketplace. It had elements of an affiliate or rewards platform. It had an element of a unified cart system specifically for Shopify with a unified checkout, almost like a marketplace. But then it also had other elements of a marketplace where you could retrieve inventory from multiple stores in the one platform, but yet it's API first. I was trying to think can't really think off the top of my head of another platform that is exactly like that. And so therefore, maybe tell us how the concept of Rye came about and what you guys are and what you do.
Yeah. And I think when you mentioned all those different pieces, those are the pieces that we work on and are part of the API, definitely. But that's clearly a lot of breadth. So yeah, I think backing up and looking at our vision would probably give a better light as to what we're trying to do. We started Rye in early 2021. It was actually myself and 4 other co-founders. One of my co-founders is actually, his name is Justin Kahn. Justin has started a bunch of tech companies.
Famous guy, Twitch and Fractal. And
exactly.
in fact, I think I've had almost every one of his other co-founders at one point or another on the podcast, but never him. So if you've got an in with him, hook us up and we'll get him on at some stage too.
Yeah, we'll definitely mention that. Yeah, definitely. Good. He's actually got his own podcast called The Quest as well. But yeah, he'll definitely do it. And he loves talking, obviously Rye, but like all the different things that he's gone through. But yeah, he's amazing. Him and I actually met in 2021. So like right before we started Rye, I didn't really have a prior relationship with him. But we had a Zoom call together and with other founders, and we kind of all just gelled really quickly on basically this concept of wanting to build something. And we wanted to build something huge. We all had, again, this like massive kind of consumer tech background. We've all done successful things in our careers. And we just were like, hey, with this kind of experienced team, let's see if we could do something pretty big. The initial idea that we had, and this was really in the heyday, the height of crypto, we said, hey, let's build a decentralized Amazon. Let's see if we could create a decentralized protocol that would take on Amazon. We were, I think, a little ahead of ourselves. Again, none of us had really a deep commerce experience to really understand what that meant. We were fixated on this idea. And through that process of trying to understand, like, can we build this thing? We started really diving deep into e-commerce and used a lot of Justin's connections. Like he knew folks from like Walmart, from Jet, and all these experienced leaders across the e-com industry. And we started having conversations with them around the problems that they were seeing. What are the issues that they faced when actually building the successful companies that they were in now? And then if they could do it all again, what were the tools and resources that they would have liked to have seen to actually build the companies that they were building? And then on top of that, outside of crypto and everything else that was going on in the world, one thing that we noticed was that there was this kind of explosion in e-commerce shopping platforms. So basically like really interesting ways where people were now shopping outside of Amazon or shopping outside of Instagram ads, Facebook ads. And the combination of these two things, we were like, hey, you know what? We don't know e-commerce that well. We don't know what is going to be the best shopping application. We know infrastructure, we know how to scale things, and we know how to create pretty good consumer interfaces. So let's go down this path of trying to build essentially a Stripe for e-commerce, a platform where we could build all the infrastructure needed for someone that is really experienced in e-commerce to build the best e-commerce experience that they need to build. And what that meant was we wanted to simplify the process of how companies could actually sell products online, how like that actual selling process would take place instead of link outs or affiliate codes. Like what if they could have native checkout directly on their platform? And then on top of that, just a much better way for them to monetize for any sales that they make through their platforms. And backing up a little bit, one thing that we saw, which was pretty funny, is Justin, obviously with his Twitch background and his venture fund that he created, he gets pitched a new live stream shopping app literally every single week. And so we were seeing all these pitches and some great ideas, some great founders, but in such a competitive landscape that was obviously growing by a lot. And we're like, there's a clear opportunity here where all of these companies have great ideas of the different niches and the markets that they could target, but none of them had good infrastructure to actually get to be able to sell products. They had to either warehouse a bunch of products, they had to make brand deals or brand partnerships to do that. And there was not a really great monetization strategy for them to get paid out for the demand that they generate. And we're like, you know, there's a clear opportunity for us to build something that can power that. So yeah, I think that was a long-winded explanation, but that's really the vision of Rye, to be that infrastructure that powers the next generation of e-commerce.
And let's dig into the nuts and bolts of that a little bit. You're probably familiar with Mike Angel and Carted and some of the other universal commerce APIs that people have tried to build over the years, where they've tried to effectively aggregate through their platform products from thousands of different websites, whether it's Shopify or Big, or basically it's really only the SaaS platforms that they tend to connect to, because those SaaS platforms tend to have very well documented and clear APIs and consistent storefront logic and theming that you can then scrape and you can pull information from, and you can get information about shipping and all the other things that you can get through a SaaS e-commerce platforms that are out there in the market. And what some of these other platforms have tried to do is to aggregate supply across those millions of platforms or hundreds of thousands of platforms in the market, and then service that up through a single API endpoint that then anyone else can then surface through their experience that they build in almost like a headless type of a way, right? And so you build maybe a headless front end, or maybe you've got an app and you need to surface some products contextually in that app. Maybe it's in your case, maybe it's a link in bio app or it's something like that, and they want to be able to surface products through that non-commerce experience, or make that non-commerce experience commerce enabled. And they need tooling to be able to do that. And short of setting up maybe their own Shopify store and loading it with products and then surfacing that product through the API into another experience somewhere else, it feels like you've taken that model and you've extended it out with the concept of a two-sided marketplace. You guys stand in the middle. You're the middleman that is the plumbing that ties all this supply together with all this potential demand, and you effectively get paid for providing those connections or those introductions.
I think that was a great summary, and that's pretty much right. I think when we went to the space, there's really, I think, 3 different buckets of that universal checkout or universal API that we saw. One, I think, is pure technology. These are like the nuts and bolts, the rails. I think Commerce.js fits into this. Folks like Violet, a number of different companies that do this, where it's, hey, we can, in a headless API, allow you to connect to the stores and the merchants that you have a relationship with already, or your own stores in a much better way. And now you have this API that essentially powers a better experience with your backend of supply. The second bucket we saw as kind of like the bolts, the fast slow world, where they said Bonsai, where they said, hey, we're going to curate a catalog of merchants, a catalog of products. And then with this catalog, present an API or like a low or no code solution that's great for publishers, great for companies that want to sell different products. And the way that they make money is through affiliates or commissions and whatnot. And then the third bucket, what we saw is the Cardids of the world. There used to be a company called 2Tap way back when, and kind of in that space where it was, hey, you know what, let's not have to curate a direct relationship with each merchant. Instead, let's use technology to be able to bot the checkout, scrape websites to get information about certain products, and then provide a way for anyone to sell anything really across our platform. And what we saw was there's really issues with all 3 things. I think the first, the infrastructure path, I think is a great business model, but it's very much commoditized. I think there's a lot of tools now that kind of do that, where it's merging BigCommerce with Shopify, with WooCommerce, with Salesforce, whatever it might be, and presenting that. I think that's a commodity. And it's actually something that we would use in our backend. The second bucket, Ableton and whatnot, I think what we said in our thesis here was that it was very non-scalable to be able to provide a compelling catalog of supply if you went from the supply first in terms of a direct integration with your system. What the companies that we talk to, it's not, okay, I just want to choose from 10,000 products that you have. It's, I have a customer, I have a shopper, I have an influencer that really like, say Allbirds as an example. They want to be able to be affiliated with Allbirds or be able to showcase like why they like Allbirds. If it's not in your catalog, that's a broken experience or something that we can't provide. And so we said, hey, we need to be able to provide really any product that folks want to sell for this to be an interesting thing that these platforms would use. And then the third bucket, I think the technology has always been the constraint. The idea is great. How can you sell anything, anywhere? And when the reality is, I think if you look at a lot of these platforms, there's a lot of things like order cancellations, making sure that inventory doesn't go out of stock, refunds, all of these different things, loyalty, like an insane amount of problems that they have to face by being essentially merchant or doing those things to power that experience. And we went down this path of being, I think, very optimistic to say, what if you can combine all 3 into one platform? And everything that is that third bucket of you could sell anything at like your cold start to be able to kick off this network. But the true kind of gold mine, the true end goal is that second bucket of being able to power every store. And when stores know about this platform and want to actually use this platform, that's when you've captured the market. And so our platform itself actually has all of these pipelines. For the first one, we actually do not care about like BigCommerce or any other platform outside of Shopify and Amazon. We said, hey, let's just make that experience as good as possible. That encompasses majority of the customers. It's obviously doesn't cover everything, but it's good enough. And let's just make that the best experience as much as we can. And then let's have a way for folks to be able to sell everything where we bought the check-in and do all that process in a simple, light way. And I think our technology is great on that front. And then once we start seeing orders come through and we're seeing volume here, we actually then go talk to the merchants directly, and using our kind of experienced co-founding team, using our BD team, we then reach out to the merchant, tell them about what we're doing, tell them about the benefits of Rye, and then onboard them into the platform. And now for the platforms that we're working with that we're sending us orders, they now have direct connection with that merchant, but any future platforms also then have a connection with that merchant. Again, very long-winded, but basically we are trying to do all three. And our strategy is to use that third bucket to really power that second bucket.
And do you think of yourself as a merchant services provider, meaning that you're working directly with somebody? Let's say I want to go and set up a Shopify store tomorrow, and I have the option of maybe hooking up with AliExpress via a drop shipping plugin, which there's hundreds on Shopify. And there's also plugins for Amazon and other platforms to source product through, and then effectively download the catalog from those platforms and then upload the orders back to those platforms, and it effectively routes it out to all the vendors for fulfillment. So it's a true drop shipping model. Do you think of yourself as almost the next generation of drop shipping technology to replace that model with a much more holistic vision of that model? So you're providing services to merchants that want to start selling but don't want to hold stock, and maybe they want to have a wide variety of products in their catalog from day dot, and they don't want to go out and source products and warehouse it, ship it. Or do you think of yourself as more of a technology provider to other platforms, i.e. the link in bios of the world, or other commerce platforms that are not only commerce, but they can weave commerce into the experience? Let's think for a second about what's likely to happen with Netflix. With AI and machine learning and machine vision, it's my assumption that sometime within the next 5 years, in real time, anything you're watching at any time, there will be almost like a ticker at the bottom of the video of every single thing on the screen in real time that you could literally purchase. If you see somebody wearing a leather jacket, you go, that's a badass leather jacket, I want to buy it right now. You will be able to buy it directly through Netflix Commerce. And do you see yourself as an infrastructure provider to somebody like them to be able to power that experience? Or do you see it more as, hey, we're a standard merchant services provider and we're effectively a drop-in replacement for a drop shipper?
Yeah, no, you got it with exactly that, like the infrastructure for platforms. And actually, the thing that you described with Netflix, I think that's really what our vision was. We want to be able to power experiences like that. I think actually I keep bringing this up in different platform calls to explain, I think, of what this future could be. But there was actually an interview with Bill Gates back in the 90s when he was talking about different technologies that he would first kind of come up in the next. And one was exactly that. He was like, watching Seinfeld, and if Seinfeld's wearing a blue jacket, I want to point my remote at the TV, buy the thing. It already has my credit card information on the TV, has my billing, shipping information. Within seconds, it's sent to me. I don't have to think about it. And that technology never really existed in a holistic way, and what we're building. And you mentioned link in bios. Yeah, we're focused on platforms right now where commerce isn't necessarily the main focus, but is supplementary or is clearly a big funnel provider for merchants. So link in bios, influencers and whatnot, they provide quite a lot of sales to a lot of different merchants by obviously upselling different products or through affiliate links or whatever it might be. And that entire path is pretty complex and not a great user experience in today's world. And so where we saw ourselves was like, hey, let's try to power native checkout on all these platforms where there's this incredible amount of intent to buy. And let's just be the technology that takes that intent from a customer, from a shopper, and then places that directly on the merchant stack, where the merchant can still understand all of the information about where that order is coming from. And the influencer could still get rewarded for that sale. But from a shopper experience, it's really native and it's clean and easy. And so we actually launched last week with a link in bio called Komi, KOMI.io. And they do link in bios for like large celebrities like Lizzo and Jessica Alba and whatnot. And our goal here really is, let's see if we can transform how shopping works with some of these celebrities, where instead of going to potentially outdated and not so loved Shopify stores, what if we could just bring that experience to buy right on the link in bio page for these influencers? So that's really the market that we're trying to target. Going back to the merchant side, our philosophy is that we will benefit merchants by just providing them more sales, better information about how people are shopping and whatnot. And we see ourselves as a channel that is omni-channel. So for merchants to be able to plug into platforms like Komi or all the other platforms that we work with. But our focus really is to make the best developer experience for these platforms to be able to sell whatever that they want.
So you see yourself as the retail aggregator yourself, as opposed to enabling merchants to be a retail aggregator. So basically it's more that they're plugging their supply into your system as opposed to, and demand, but not so much that they are out there driving demand themselves to this ultra broad catalog of products that you're supplying to them as an individual merchant on their individual Shopify store. They are just one endpoint of supply from your perspective, and where they ultimately source that product from is not really any of your business. That's their business to source products however they would normally source them, even if it is a drop shipping model from their side. Yeah. Let's say they do supply from AliExpress ultimately.
Yeah.
When you send your order, your aggregated orders, let's say you're a composite cart for all intents and purposes, right? So you might, somebody in a link in bio might have 5 items in their cart in the link in bio, and it might be from 5 different Shopify stores. You then funnel those out to the 5 Shopify stores. You create those orders via API in those Shopify stores. They then have to worry about fulfilling those from their supply, however they manage that. And then if they forward that on to a dropship supplier for ultimate fulfillment to the end customer, that's not your responsibility. It is the Shopify's store's responsibility. But as I understand it, you do become the merchant of record because you've actually taken payment and you have sent those orders out to the fulfillment partners. It just so happens that those fulfillment partners happen to be Shopify stores.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly right, except for the last part. So being a merchant of record was an issue that we obviously didn't want to fall into. And we also didn't want to be in the current early stage that we're in, PCI compliant, and deal with all those. And so our technology actually allows us to forward payments directly to the merchant without us holding onto that payment information. The platforms that we work with holding onto that payment information, we actually use third parties to facilitate that. And what that unlocks is allowing that customer to essentially directly send that payment information directly to the merchant, and then the merchant being merchant of record. The caveat, though, is for some cases where we don't have a relationship with that merchant, we'll accept payment and then pass it on to the merchant via our own method. So in that flow, we are the merchant of record. But the state that we want to get to, and what our technology unlocks, is literally forwarding all that payment information directly to the merchant. And I think that really is the happy path, where we act as just a routing tool and a composite cart, a routing tool to be able to send orders to many different merchants in one cart, and for the platforms to just solely focus on the best user experience for whoever they're targeting, and then merchants to just focus on building the best products that they want to build. And I think this kind of is maybe a little bit idealistic, but we also saw that for merchants, hopefully we get to a world where merchants don't have to spend a lot of thought or time or money in things like attribution and or customer acquisition. They're just focused on building the best product. And these platforms that are much better than Facebook, Instagram, TikTok have the infrastructure to be able to sell whatever they want and just focus on building the best experience for the users. And then where we live is just, again, being that routing function.
Wow, I've got a million questions. I'm going to try to put them out there in a systematic fashion that hopefully makes sense to you, me, and the audience. Okay, first off, you've heard the stories and the announcement by Meta that they are going to be closing down shop access for redirected checkout. Okay, that's happening. I think it's in April of next year, I think, is when the final cutoff date is happening for that, which means that merchants that want to sell via e-commerce on Meta platforms, they will have to use the native in-app checkout experience. And I hear merchants screaming and hollering about this, but putting my consumer hat on, that's the way it should have always been. I don't think a redirected checkout is a shitty checkout. The reality is it's broken. Oftentimes, I have tried to buy things on Instagram before, and I've bailed out of the checkout flow because when I got redirected to the checkout, that product wasn't even in my cart. I actually had to search the site for that product. Just they may as well just run an ad. They didn't
or
even
you have
need to
to
run a
log
shop.
in. There's a list of things that are way worse.
Terrible experience. Just terrible experience. If I've already provided my information to Meta, why the hell should I then have to create an account and put it in my information all over again, find the product again, when I could have just followed an ad to the product page? At the very least, it would have been more seamless than shopping through the shop. So I think shops should have always been that way, but I think they were cautious about treading on the toes of merchants who already feel like they're getting screwed by Amazon and lacking customer data to begin with. And they were trying to ease into that commerce side, but they realize now that's a massive opportunity for commerce for merchants. And the friction means that currently conversion rates off shops are very low. But if you can do in-app purchasing, I suspect that conversion rates will probably triple overnight. And so for the merchants that already use native Meta checkout, those conversion rates are already significantly higher. So I think once we can have composite carts inside of Meta, and we can have 2 or 3 different items from 2 or 3 different shops, and we pay one payment and they distribute it out like a marketplace to the merchant for fulfillment, then we're going to have a really nice experience. Similar to WeChat. The reason why WeChat is so successful is because they from day one have had native in-app shopping and purchasing. It's taken over the whole of Asia. Basically, if you're Asian, my wife's Asian. And so the reality is we know what these apps are doing in Asia, particularly in China, and they own the vast majority of commerce. That's the reality. It's these social apps because you can buy in-app. So I think that's a massive advancement for Meta. And so in your scenario, now they'll probably build their own, you could power that experience for them. For example, if they only wanted to integrate with Shopify stores, then you could power that entire internal experience for them, correct?
Yeah, we could. And I think there's a lot of things there. So I think one is, I think a big reason why I think merchants are hesitant about this or up in arms around this is because it's Meta. It's because it's folks like Google or TikTok. The goal there for these companies, these large organizations, is to really control all that user data, right? They want to know who's shopping where, what are they shopping, and they're not incentivized to provide that information back to the merchant. They're incentivized to keep that. They're sending orders to the merchant, great. And yeah, maybe conversion rates, abandonment rates go way down and conversion rates triple, but still these merchants have no idea what's going on. They're now way more beholden to using Facebook or Instagram ads to sell their products. Tax will increase. It's going to be a nightmare for the world, I think, if that continues. Where we come from is we think that shopping and e-commerce in general is completely transitioning. And I think just like what's happening in China, I think a lot of folks want to shop outside of Instagram ads. They want to shop outside of TikTok. And in the industry today, these big companies have spent tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars on essentially building that infrastructure to be able to do native checkout, where it's a much better experience, where conversion rates can triple and all those things. Our underlying thesis is that we want to create that infrastructure for all the other platforms. And on top of that, we want to not control that data. We want to be essentially, again, just infrastructure to route that. So we think it is in the best interest if the platforms that are making these orders understand, obviously, the data that is coming through their platforms, but then merchants are understanding all the data that is coming from all their different platforms, and they can still control that data. They still get first-party customer data. They get the email address, obviously, all the different things that they want today by having really, unfortunately, crappy sign-in flows and all those other things, checkout fields and whatnot. All of those things are honestly pretty terrible in today's world, but obviously that data is super, super valuable to merchants. And yeah, going back to it, we could power what Instagram is doing, and really what our technology does is exactly that. It allows for native direct checkout to any of those merchants directly on a platform. But fundamentally, we do not want to power large companies like that. We want to power the other platforms, all the other platforms that are growing. And we've talked to a lot of social commerce platforms, bigger folks as well. And yeah, really where we stand is we want to be able to prove out this technology and be able to prove out that this is the future of e-commerce. But yeah, the future is not going to be, we think, shopping on Instagram and Facebook. It's going to be on all the other platforms.
You might want to be working, for example, with the Reddits of the world, with the Pinterests of the world, with obviously the link and bio tools, maybe the Netflixes of the world if they don't build their own thing. You want to be working with the competitors of the entrenched incumbents that are trying to leverage their walled gardens into commerce and keep that data locked in their walled gardens. And for you guys, you said you also work with Amazon. Now, this is an interesting subject in itself that we could probably talk about for hours. So let's maybe just skim the surface of this one a little bit. Obviously, Amazon is trying to get into more places with Buy with Prime, and they're trying to expand their reach off platform in all sorts of new and innovative ways, and seeing some pretty significant success on that front. Now, you say so do you integrate with Amazon in a similar way to how you integrate with Shopify, in that, hey, we can effectively make anything that's available on Amazon available through our plumbing, available in a unified checkout, and effectively we will forward that order on to the correct merchant via the Amazon APIs?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. Yeah, so we do it the exact same way, and we route those orders. The main reason why we enable Amazon is solely because of demand right now. So
supply.
Yeah, folks on these platforms, Shopify and its market share is increasing, and we see this year over year. It's increasing pretty rapidly, but there's still quite a lot of demand to be able to say, hey, I bought this thing on Amazon. I just want to be able to reference it and sell that thing. So we allow for that. We actually do not take a cut at all on any of the transactions through Amazon. Amazon Associates is notoriously pretty locked in, and we don't accrue any rewards for that. Our platforms don't accrue any rewards for that either. It's solely to enable a better user experience. I do imagine, though, that especially as we grow, there's going to be better alternatives for merchants to move off of Amazon and be able to see sales channels funnel this way. But until then, yeah, we're just like, hey, let's at cost be able to sell any Amazon product to these platforms and see how far that goes. To be honest, adding in Amazon was actually relatively simple and easy for us. So it wasn't a lot of overhead. It wasn't a lot of, with Amazon APIs, it's actually pretty consistent and easy to use. It just made sense to, but the Amazon side of what we do is not really what we push for or what we see as a future. It's just a stopgap.
Makes sense. It bulks out your supply instantaneously, basically, which is really important. In order to build the demand side, you have to have supply side first. Supply has to lead demand just slightly. Yeah. That's the nature of the beast, right? On any two-sided marketplace, which is effectively, you're three-sided in a sense. But the two next questions that immediately leap to mind for me are, let's say you did a deal with Linktree, let's just say hypothetically, to run their entire commerce operation for them. And let's say I use Linktree and I want to feature products on my Linktree that I can sell and get a cut on. Does your infrastructure effectively provide the search service within Linktree so that when I go into my Linktree admin to add products to my feed effectively, that then I can search for those products in there, and effectively your API is fetching all the products and the links and the images and all that stuff from wherever it is you're sourcing that, whether that be Amazon or a Shopify store. It then will present that maybe as a tile or whatever it might be. And then I can go active with that just by an easy search and find interface for the products I'm looking to represent or on sell. It's that simple that you provide all that underlying plumbing and that admin functionality for the end user who wants to sell products. You provide that admin interface and all the API connectivity to power all of that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the TLDR is, yes, we do. But we want to give these platforms as much flexibility to really create the best experience that they want to, while still being able to essentially power selling anything. Backing up a little bit, I think one example of this is actually TikTok. I don't know if you've played around with TikTok Shop from a influencer seller side.
No, I haven't. No.
It's terrible. So if you're a seller and you don't have your own store, you're given this catalog of products with, I think, affiliate commissions associated with it. And honestly, the catalog of products, I think it's in the kind of range of 10 to 100,000 products or whatever it might be. And it's these AliExpress dropship products. I personally would never say that, hey, I really
represent this product or whatever. Yeah.
It's kind of just a random assortment of products. And I think this kind of goes back to the Bolts and the Fast of the world, where if you just have that, you have this catalog of just merchants that you're saying, hey, this is our curated list. You have to use this list. You don't allow for the creativity. You don't allow for the uniqueness of your end users that want to or have done the research on any product. There's a lot of niche products that you miss. you're obviously missing any new products that's spin up in like the last couple of months. And, like you don't allow for these influencers and folks that actually provide context to really sell the thing that they actually want to vouch for instead of a commission rate, if that makes sense. And so we wanted to power both. So with the hypothetical example of Linktree, we say, hey, Linktree, we have this curated list of products that is the top million products in Shopify. And where we get this is the top 100,000 by merchants and then 10 best selling products per merchant. So you have this like really nice curated list of really high quality products, as well as I think we have 500,000 top selling Amazon products as well. So we could say, hey, if you don't want to think about like what product to send, or if you just want that TikTok experience of let me pick and choose the products with high commission rates and then just put it on my store, here you go. Here's a list of 1.5 million products. We use affiliate networks to power the actual affiliate rewards for that. So we say, hey, here's the 1.5 million. And for any products that actually do have affiliate commissions, here's the commission that you would earn if you add this to your store. Great. Now you have a really good catalog. That catalog is 100,000 times better than TikTok's current catalog of products. But outside of that, our API allows for the platforms, but really more so the users, to say, you know what, there's this new brand that I really like. It's not in your catalog. Like here's the domain, here's the name of the merchant, here's the actual product link that I like. Add this to my inventory, and within milliseconds, now it's added to our catalog. We see if there's any affiliate commissions associated with it, but now you can sell that product as well. So that way, really, it's that flexibility of I'm an influencer. I just care about the products I really like. I want to sell those, and we could do that. Or I just want to make some money based off of affiliate commissions. Just give me some really great products that I can talk about and kind of shill and make some money off them. So we kind of power both.
Yeah. And is it your vision to one day allow, for example, a surcharge or an extra margin to be added by the influencer or whatever it is to say, hey, look, because these people are going to buy through me and I'm effectively doing the advertising on your behalf, I'm going to add 10% to this price that I'm being quoted, that sure, I might even get an affiliate fee from, but I know that my audience trusts me and they're going to pay me. They're happy to pay a 10% premium on this product because I was the one that recommended it. And they're unlikely to go shopping somewhere else and Google it and try to find it cheaper somewhere else. They're just going to go, because I've said, go to my bio, get this product right now. They're going to do that. They're not even going to look. They're not going to Google it. They're just going to buy from me.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that requires a little bit more infrastructure because then you are more like a merchant of record. Then you have to dispense funds. The seller, the influencer, has to have an account with you, and then they maybe have to have they have to have PayPal account or a credit card account or something stored with you, or a wallet of some variety stored with you, that then all those fees and commissions and margins get paid into, that then they can, draw down once a month or something like that into their bank account. So there's a lot more infrastructure required for that kind of model. So it's an interesting, you almost have to have that anyway, even if there's just an affiliate structure, you have to have a way to get the money into the affiliate's hands. And so there's a whole lot going on here it's not just a checkout. It's a whole lot more than that. There's almost a digital wallet component that has to go along with this to power this, both for the platform vendor, but also for the affiliate partner.
Yeah. And interestingly, within our API today, platforms can do that. They can actually take a surcharge, a percentage, or a flat fee on top of any sale that they want. And I think you bring up a really good point. So the complexity there is obviously we're in this world of like Linktrees or kind of social commerce. You're fanning out that payment to tens, hundreds, thousands, millions of people. That's a tough problem. Where we are right now is saying, hey, it's on the platform to handle that. They're making the best user experience and they have the relationship with these creators, allow them to figure that out. So we say, hey, Linktree, this is super programmatic. We can say, hey, Linktree, per order, you can add that surcharge. If in your UI, you allow it from the creator, great. We are going to funnel all of those payments directly to you, Linktree, and it's your responsibility to then fan that out. I think in the future, one route is, yes, like we'll have essentially like a Stripe Connect or functionality for creators to get those payouts directly from us. We, in general, we don't want the end user relationship transparent as possible where we're just really infrastructure, but in the future, we might do that for payouts. But I think you touched on this and we're kind of leading to this. I think really the not so near but long-term vision of this is wallet technologies, better ways for us to pay out these creators, these platforms in a way that doesn't use platforms that take that 3%, where 3% plus some flat rate where it doesn't then make sense at scale to be doing these payouts. So imagine if you actually could create these crypto wallets for every creator that was on Linktree without them even knowing. And say these creators were making 10 cents on the dollar for the products that they were selling. Those 10 cents could be done in USDC, basically no charge directly into their wallet.
Yep.
And now they have a
Micropayments
wallet
for everybody.
Exactly. Micropayments for everybody. And there's already technology that does this. There could be technology that actually then forwards those micropayments directly to their bank account. And over time, they're making a ton of money, or they could convert those into other things that they want to be able to buy things with, whatever it might be. But now that money is actually into their wallets without minimum payouts. Hey, you need to make $100 to get the first payout. It's immediate. And I think we're about probably a year from that, but that's the next evolution for us, is to enable things like that.
Yeah, obviously Lightning, Solana Pay, there's lots of micropayment technologies out there. I think they obviously got blown out of the water by several things. One is FTX and the massive grift in the crypto community has set back crypto adoption. My guess would be 5 to 10 years, just because of all the bullshit in the industry, which is really sad, because I think Web3 holds a lot of promise, but there's too many shysters in the industry still. A lot of them are getting flushed pretty quick, but the promise is for exact scenarios like this to enable commerce in an almost frictionless and almost cost-free way. That promise is huge. And if we're going to have commerce everywhere, like I think we eventually will, crypto will absolutely play a part in that. Most likely CBDC though, however. I think that most likely central bank digital currencies are going to step into the breach there. They want control of our money. So the reality is that's probably going to be here sooner than mainstream cryptos taking over in place of CBDCs. But that's all going to play out. But what I think is the more interesting piece here is that we're empowering really a new kind of marketplace, in the sense that it's a multiplayer marketplace, right? It's not a two-sided marketplace. It's not a three-sided marketplace. In some instances, this might be a 5 or a 6-sided marketplace. So it means that the percentage of margin to go around is going to be distributed more broadly. Instead of it being, say, 30% for the merchant, it might be 20% for the merchant, and then an extra 10% that is divided between you, somebody like Linktree, and somebody like an influencer, right? So we're going to have more granular payments that are smaller in nature, but are more frequent in nature, and are going to be enabled in more places in nature. I think we're going to have, I've talked about this before, and I've said it, I've coined the term stealth commerce, meaning transactions that take place that consumers don't traditionally associate as a transaction. Because today, they know when they log into a Shopify store and they search for a product, they add it to their cart, they put in the credit card details, they check out, they pay their shipping, they know that's a transaction. Especially with IoT and other technologies, smart devices, etc. If I say, especially with machine vision and machine learning and AI, with where they're going now, I can have cameras in my fridge, and I can say, I always want to have 5 carrots in my fridge. I always want to have fresh this. I always want to have fresh that. And basically, I can have that monitored in real time as an IoT device that's net connected. And then those orders can just happen transparently. I'll have my, let's say it's Amazon that provides it, or if it's the local supermarket that provides it that I'm connected with, or whatever. I can have my payment details stored with them and say, look, this is my min-max, almost like a commercial restaurant. And I just want that shit to get reordered once a week. I always want to have a carton of milk in there. I always want to have a loaf of bread in my pantry. I always want to have X, Y, Z, and it just all happens. Or when my car's due for service, it automatically connects me with my preferred supplier of oil and filter. It automatically sends that to my preferred mechanic. It automatically books me in with my mechanic, and then it just adds it to my Google Calendar. And I just know next week at 5 o'clock or 3 o'clock, I got to take my car down, and all the shit that needs to get done is already there, and it just happens. And my payment's already stored. So I think we're pretty rapidly heading towards not only commerce everywhere, but smart device and IoT enabled stealth commerce that the consumer doesn't have to think of it as a transaction. It's part of life. It just happens behind the scenes seamlessly, and they don't have to stress about it.
I think that's exactly the future that we envision. And I think you touched on it. Each piece in that subsystem could take their cut, whatever it might be, even if it's a micropayment for that functionality of just being able to, like, hey, this is a piece of bread that is out. Let's go send a request to another place to order the thing. And then that sends it to the grocery store, whatever it might be. Each piece gets their own little cut. And I think that is truly the future. And I think, honestly, the e-commerce space hasn't really evolved too much in the last couple decades to enable that. And I think it's because of bigger incumbents that have taken over. Because if you look at those margins, there's a ton of margin to be taken. If you take kind of customer acquisition margins for especially D2C for a lot of merchants, it's anywhere from like 10 to 40%, 40% on Amazon. Of course, there's like fulfillment by Amazon and all those things, but in general, it's to essentially get an order, you're paying up to 40% of your revenue. And if you could split that out by even 5 different parties to maybe double the amount of customer interest, it really is a free market economy now that is created, and the most efficient will win. And I think you hit the nail on the head. That's the future, I think, of what e-commerce is doing. I think we're probably a stepping stone to that point, and hopefully we get to the point where we enable any of those parties to be able to really quickly just say, hey, I have the payment information, I have the shipping information, billing information, and the order intent. Here's all that information, Rye, go place this order on a merchant site, whatever it might be, on the merchant's order stack, really, whatever that might be. And if we could do that, then I think a lot of those things that you just mentioned hopefully are much easier to actually build.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a grand vision, and I think we'll eventually get there. And I think AI and the rise of AI, which is actually perversely the implosion of Web3, has released a whole lot of developers to go and work on AI instead, which I think has a lot more real world promise as of right now and today than crypto and Web3 does and the metaverse does. I think they're a decade or two out before those have real world application today. Whereas I think a lot of the AI technology, I'm using a lot more AI technology today in my everyday workflow. I'm using AI, generative AI. I'm using it in ways that I never thought I would use it, and it's making me more efficient today. This is not pie in the sky years from now. This is today. As a content creator in particular, it's massively beneficial. So it's very exciting times. Now, I assume that you guys, you are a transactional business, meaning that the way you guys make your money is all the transactions that you facilitate, you take a small cut of that, correct?
Yeah, so we're, I think, a little bit different than traditional ways, and we are still very early. So we're obviously iterating on what our business monetization strategy would be. Where we want to be and where we take a cut right now is actually only on commission. So anytime that there's a payment through the system from essentially an affiliate network or a merchant to a platform, we'll take a cut of that. And so this accounts for things like affiliate fees. If a merchant comes in and sets like a 10, 20% commission through the right platform, we'll take a cut on that. And then also for the margins and the surcharges that platform set. But what that means is that to transact on Rise, so if you're selling things at MSRP, if you want to use our product graph and our product oracle to like view product data and whatnot, all of that is fully free. Anyone can use that, can create a developer key and use that. And the way that we think about it is if we take a cut on the commission, then it's really everyone wins in that scenario. So merchants are hopefully getting way more sales than the CACs that they're spending on ads or Amazon at a much cheaper rate. These platforms are making way better commissions with getting affiliate commissions that they wouldn't have normally gotten before, or with direct relationships with merchants. And then we take a cut of that. In the future, I think if things get a little wonky and there's a lot of transactions through the system, we might have to rejigger that a little bit to make sure that we don't go under. But really, the idea there is to make it win for all parties here. Oh, Jason, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. I did kill that. So you guys are fully out of beta today. You're fully transactional today. You've got those 3 major buckets of functionality up and running today. Presumably, you only work with Amazon and Shopify today, but presumably at some point you may add some other platforms, the BigCommerces, the VTexes, the Salesforce Commerce Clouds of the world, because they're SaaS platforms too. So I'm guessing that there's an integration roadmap within your business to look at adding to supply effectively wherever you can aggregate it from into your universal API. Fantastic. So if people want to learn more about you guys today, I'll just spell it out what your website is. It's Rye, like rye bread, RYE.com. I'm not sure how that's like what I would consider a golden domain name. Is there a story there that you can share really quickly about how you got that golden domain?
There's a much longer story, but the short story is that we actually were called operator.com. We had to change our name pretty quickly, and Rye fell in our lap for a very cheap price, and we're like, let's do it. And we are now going to be called Rye.
Love it. Love it. Absolutely cool. So if people want to find out more, are they best to go and find you on LinkedIn and chat to you there? Or would you prefer that they just go to rye.com, rye.com? They can get an API key there that presumably they can reach out to you through the website and learn more. How do you like people to start the conversation and dialogue with you about Rye?
Yeah, we're very open. But yeah, all the information, you should be able to find all information about us on rye.com, rye.com. But my personal email is Arjun, ARJUN @rye.com. So anyone can email me anytime. And my Twitter handle is, I think, ArjunB023. So feel free to message me. And yeah, we're on LinkedIn, all the different socials. But yeah, we love to chat with folks in the industry.
Love it. Love it. Look, we're at the very exciting part of it. If you've listened to my podcast before, you know the part that we're at, where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you. I get to let you ask me one question, any question you like. It can be personal, can be professional, either way. Arjun Bhargava.
Yeah, you got it.
Bhargava. Okay, cool. I knew I was going to butcher this. So apologies. Yeah. What is your question for me, Mr. Arjun from Rye?
I think there's the harder questions I think I could ask, but the question that I'm most interested in, and I think I get a lot of really interesting answers, is if there is contextual commerce across the world, what are you most excited about doing? Like, what is the interaction that you think is the most exciting in that future?
Great question. Absolutely stunning question. I do think there's probably two answers. There's two parts to my answer. One is I think that stealth commerce thing, I think it can't come fast enough. I really, from a transactional commerce perspective, there's lots of things in my, I do probably 80 to 90% of my shopping online, but first of all, for me, there's still too much shopping I need to do in person. I'd ideally like to do 100% of my shopping online in some way.
Yeah.
But I think that contextual commerce outside of the traditional physical buying spaces is what probably excites me the most. Yeah. So you can think of retail media today as the legacy version of that. So if you think of some popular websites today, whether it's Amazon or whether it's Walmart or even some of your smaller but highly trafficked websites, they will place ads for other brands on their website that are just ads. They don't even complete the purchase on that website. And that's retail media, right? That's effectively banner advertising, effectively programmatic advertising across all these different digital properties that may or may not even be selling those products themselves. I think we're going to get to that place, but in physical environments real soon. So if I happen to be in, I don't know, let's say I'm sitting in McDonald's, right? And I've got a touch screen at my table, right? And they don't even have to be showing ads. It could just be content, or it could just be just a product stream. It could be content around a product because it's detected my NFC in my phone and it knows what my interests are, and it's tailoring content to show it to me almost like a personalized TV show for me. To be able to buy products in almost anywhere at any time that is relevant contextually to the experience that I'm having, I think that promise is really exciting to me. And I think that we're pretty rapidly getting to a place where that's going to be enabled pretty seamlessly and pretty easily. I think that transactional side where I don't have to think about it anymore, that's also very exciting to me. That piece where just the standard stuff of life that I have to buy on a regular routine basis, I don't want to think about that shit. Yeah. I just want to have it happen. I just want it to turn up at my door. I want it to know where I am based on my bloody phone because I have it glued to my head 24/7 anyway. I'm never more than about a meter away from my phone. So if it could just send almost like two-factor authentication, we just said, oh, your order's due to go out. We've detected from your phone that you're at this address. Is that where you are? Can we ship to that address? And you just literally, with my thumbprint, I just allow it. I just authorize it. Those types of experiences, I think there's just, as you pointed out, I think commerce is still pretty legacy in the way that it's transacted today. Yeah. Really, most e-commerce websites are just mail order gone digital. Yep. If we think of Sears and Roebuck, and we think some of the very, very first, I think it was Sears that actually had the very first mail order catalog in the United States. I'm pretty sure it was Sears, or it was one of the other majors. I've written an article on this before, but anyways, really all we've done is we've taken that exact model and we've just digitized it. And really, there's still a similar amount of friction involved in those transactions. Somebody has to execute a transaction with intent, meaning they have to want to buy in that moment to actually go through the hoops of actually making that purchase. And I think that's still too much friction. And I think that if I had to put an umbrella over the top of it, I just think that transactional friction, and even when we think about what happens in a supermarket for example, when we go to the checkout and it's got the bubble gum and it's got the candy, it's got the sweets, and impulse buys. I think that commerce is going to be much more about impulse buys in the future through Commerce Anywhere, and the traditional transactional stuff is all just going to go away. We won't have to intentionally make those purchases. They'll just bloody happen. We're going to have RFID. Levi's has already introduced this with Google. We're going to have sensors in our clothes, for example, when they become threadbare, when they've been washed 200 times. We're going to have all that stuff. It is all going to be net connected with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and it's gonna connect with our phone or with probably a chip in our brain by then. And it's all just all those transactional things. If I say, look, I want to have at all times, I want to have 3 wearable pairs of Levi's 501s in my drawer at all times, dark blue, whatever, that's just going to all happen. And I will no longer, especially for guys like me that don't like shopping for fashion, like I don't want to go to the store and try something on. I just want to make sure that at all times I got good shit in my wardrobe that I can wear. That kind of stuff is all just going to go away from a transactional perspective. And I think the future of commerce is super exciting. I think that there's still some foundational building blocks that aren't quite mature enough yet. And I think AI is part of that. But I think the future of commerce is very bright and very exciting.
Yeah, love it. I think we share similar visions. I think that's the future.
It is. Listen, man, I have super enjoyed chatting with you. What you guys are building is super ambitious. Like you said, there have been other platforms that have picked up pieces of this, but to try to bring it all together under one roof is super ambitious. But it sounds like you've got a really cool and broad-based, capable team working alongside you to make this happen. You're not clearly doing it completely on your own, which is good. You know, what from an investment perspective, are you guys bootstrapped? Do you have investors? You've obviously got Justin on your team. Where are you guys at now, especially with the funding environment being what it is? How are you guys looking at funding for you guys?
Yeah, great question. So we are actually fully funded institutionally. So our lead investor is Andreessen Horowitz. We actually raised with them last year, and we raised a total of $15 million for our seed round. And that's actually quite a lot of money, I think, timing-wise.
That's a huge seed.
That's a very large seed. And timing-wise, I think we got very lucky when fundraising was still pretty hot. And we actually have around 4 years of runway right now. So we have lots of room to build. Right now, the entire company is focused and heads down on building. I think hopefully the next kind of source of capital will actually be profit. And with the commissions that I was talking about, hopefully by that time we'll be able to do it. But fully funded, which is a great place to be in this environment. We are hiring though, and hiring across our stack, mostly engineering. But that's a
very
overview.
Nice. Was that through A16Z?
Yes, through A16Z. Yep.
Wow, congratulations. Not only from a funding perspective, but I guess from a capability and ability to help you guys grow and see other routes to market. And I guess to get that is, from a VC perspective, it's almost the gold standard. So you guys have done very well, not just from a money perspective, but from a partner perspective, as opposed to an absentee investor. They're going to be super helpful for you guys and make introductions and connections. And you guys are very well connected. So congratulations on who you've been able to partner with. Justin's obviously a fantastic resource for you guys. Very cool. Very excited for you. Congratulations. Sounds like you're building the future of commerce. And I can't wait to get you on in maybe another 12 months and see where Rye has gone. Thank you very much, Arjun, for spending time with me today on the podcast. I can't wait to speak to you again soon. Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.